Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we'll see how to display sheet contents using various methods. The first method involves the usage of dimensions and fetching the values of the sheet at once and then showing the contents using a loop. The other method involves fetching the values of sheet object as a tuple and then iterating over the rows and showing the Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we'll see how to display sheet contents using different methods. Let's start. The first method using which we can show the entire sheet contents. So to show the entire sheet content at once, what we can do, we can use the dimension to get the active range, specify that dimension in our sheet object, and then iterate over each of the values for the column and show the values using different set of variables. Now, one thing that needs to be kept in mind over here is the number of columns returned by dimension and the variables you are using to fetch those values should be equal. If not, the program is going to throw an error. Along with that, we need to set the data only attribute to true so that Python prioritizes values over formulas instead of formula over values, which is the default attribute of Python code using Openpyxl. So this is the first method. We'll see in few minutes that how it's going to show us the output when we use the dimension to fetch the range and then iterating over each of the column and getting values and showing it on screen. Now let's have a look at the other method. The other method says we can read each row of the sheet as a tuple and then we can output that entire row content in the form of a tuple. Suppose we have our practice Excel sheet, which is the source sheet which we are using throughout the course. The employee data sheet is having 4 columns: name, age, department, and salary. So when we are going to use this method, so the output value will be returned in the form of a tuple as I have marked over here. Okay. If we want, rather than showing the values as a tuple, if we want to show it individually, the other method, the alternate way to do this is fetching the row object, all the rows, and then iterating over each rows for the cells in that particular row. Then we can output the values separately like this. We'll use rows method, and with this we iterate over all the rows, and with each row object we'll iterate for the cells in that particular row object, and we can show the cell references using the cell references will be returned, and we can have the value attribute to show the value on screen. So these are the 3 methods we can use. To give you a quick recap, what we can say, what we saw is we can use the dimensions and then getting those values in respective count of variables and showing using the value attribute. Okay. The next method says we can have directly a collection of all the rows as tuple, and then we can display the content of each row as a tuple on screen. And an alternate to this is fetching all the rows and iterating over each rows to show the cell values contained in that particular cell. So now when we get the row reference, we are iterating on the cell object. That cell object means the reference to the cell. That's why we need to use the value attribute over here. Now these three methods, these three ways can be used in exchange of one or the other depending on the requirement which you are having in your application that needs to be developed. And for now, a small exercise for you to continue. You need to prepare an interactive Python code like the way we did in the previous assignment. We need to ask for book name to open. For now, make sure that the workbook is existing in your system and the worksheet that needs to be made active. These two options should be asked one after the other. And once the user has specified the sheet name, we need to show the contents one row at a time. Now here we are supposed to show one row at a time. That means we could go with the second or third method which we have studied in.